What is up, YouTube? It's Kingfisher745, and welcome to episode 86 of All Hail the King. In this episode, we're going to be featuring Cloak and Dagger, and this one's been coming for a long time. In fact, the segment and the team were first proposed before the nerfs or changes to Shot in the Dark. And so that is going to throw a little bit of a twist on all the team-ups. I still think that they're very viable, but they were even better pre-change. So just keep that in perspective. The first team-up is going to be the most obvious, and the one that myself and many others have talked about. That's going to be with Heimdall. Now, there are a few factors besides them both being great characters that make this team work. The first and most obvious is that Heimdall with his level 9 is going to give them Agile, Focused, Fortified, and Strengthened, all in one ability. Besides that, of course, he has a chance to prevent enemy attacks. And lastly, that we're going to point out, most enemy attacks cannot be stealthy, plus a chance to negate preemptive counterattacks. So hopefully he can stop the Dark Energy Blade, and also stop enemy characters like Spitfire from teeing off on your Cloak and Dagger. This provides a lot of support to Cloak and Dagger, and previously when you could use Shot in the Dark right away, they would practically have a Team Annihilator right after gaining Gallarhorn. Now currently on them we're trying out the Intangible EISO, and the Covert EISO, and then on Heimdall, we placed Calculated Force. So we'll see if that comes into play in this match as well. Besides Calculated Force, he also has his own Halting EISO, chance to preemptively negate counterattacks. Now with Cloak and Dagger, since we can't use Shot in the Dark, and since Heimdall didn't go first anyways, we try to use our level 2 as a setup, and unfortunately the Dark Energy Blade interrupts that, something like 95% of the time, at least in my own estimate. I'm pretty confident everyone's seeing the same results, so that's pretty much the only thing bringing them down. I guess they need to have some checks and balances, though it really hurts having it on that ability. For one, it's kind of their setup move, and for two, we like to place either the Ailing AISO or the Endemic on it, and those are very important debuffs that we don't want to miss out on. Despair though is even more important, and that's why we actually put it on Heimdall's level 2. So hey, another great reason to love Heimdall. A free action Despair. Besides the whole Eternal Vigilant and off-balance winded thing. But of course, after using that, we're going to use his level 9 buff, and we'll be transported to the Bifrost Bridge. Now like I said, a Shot in the Dark may not even come into play, but certainly this buff won't hurt anything. Finest Hour will receive the greatest impact from it, but anytime you can gain Agile, Focused, Fortified, and Strengthened, you're going to benefit. After that, on my agent's turn, we're going to use the Fire Tornado and exhaust the enemies. Then we're going to use Smothering Shadow. Once again, the Lantern of Doom, an incredible item, and I hope that you are able to pick it up. If not though, there are free items like the Dark Sigil that you may want to try out. Now the enemy Red Hulk uses Bulwark, but that's all he can do on his turn. So since Shot in the Dark's still on cooldown, they actually allowed Pitch Black to be available. I suppose they thought this would thwart our plans, but this attack really isn't that much better. For our enemies, I mean. Honestly, I almost think they listened to the podcast whenever I did it on Cloak and Dagger, and they thought we better put Shot in the Dark on cooldown to start out. But making Pitch Black available, well, that's still going to be really nasty. Though we may not quite see its destructive force in this one. In fact, we're going to go ahead and recharge with them. Let the enemy agent die to dots, and then we'll unleash Heimdall's level 1 on Red Hulk. For this first fight, we're going to let Shot in the Dark come off of cooldown, and then we'll end the first match with that ability. So we'll see what it would have done basically to the entire enemy team after Heimdall's buffs. Just one last improbability field, and then with Cloak and Dagger, a Shot in the Dark is now off of cooldown. So we'll use that attack, and it does a 26k crit. Pretty much we would have hit the entire enemy team for that, which is just about enough to knock them out. Only some of the higher health teams would live through that. For our next teammate, we're using Spiral, and we had some very good reasons for that as well. You see, Spiral's Dancing Queen says, counterattacks with Macabre Fandango, and grants an extra turn. This happens when an attack is dodged using Dancing Queen. So it actually will happen automatically, and what Macabre Fandango does is places pressure points debuffs on the enemy team and grants your allies Rising Up. Of course, Rising Up once again would power Finest Hour and a Shot in the Dark. Besides that, you're going to get all sorts of debuffs and dots from Spiral, including a breakdown ability, and she also has an AoE Disoriented, so that will help out with Exploits Delirium. It's a pretty interesting team up, and you also have to remember that Spiral can cause Bane and Depower with her level 2, Flashbolt. With her Rhythmic EISO, which you can find in Season 2, Chapter 5, Mission 5, she gains Shall We Dance. So all of her dance actions are available as a multi-action. This does include Macabre Fandango. Here it is right here, so it's going to cause Rising Up to her allies, and it's going to place Thorns on her. That's because of the Thorned AISO. Now obviously that's better to get as a quick action, and in your best case scenario that's what will happen. But for right now we're going to go ahead and try Flashbolt on the enemy Pestilence Beast, and he ends up dodging it. Since he's up next, that was really unfortunate. But we do get a Relentless Rapier follow-up attack, and now on his turn we get a preemptive counter. And that's not all from Cloak and Dagger. Plus they ultimately dodge his attack. So hey, at least that went pretty well. And on their turn, we're going to actually unleash a really quick Pitch Black. So here's the move that they thought would be better than Shot in the Dark to be available right away. Still pretty nasty, you have to admit. And following that, we can use a Light Fantastic with Pestilence Beast being knocked out. The enemy agent barely lives after his dots, but a melee attack's going to finish him. So there it is, another pretty quick win in the books, and I have to admit, this is a pretty fun team. For our next team up, it's going to be somewhat similar in that it's a magic attacker dot type of team. For this, we're going to use a very powerful character, Nico. Now I have to say, one thing that bothers me about the meta is almost everyone's running a full team Despair. Usually on You're Not Worthy, or maybe on Fear Me. This really hurts Nico. That Resurrect was a huge thing, and it's basically taken away. So that's unfortunate, but the connection she had to Shot in the Dark was with her level 2 multifunction, Kick-Ass. She grants an ally an extra turn, Rising Up, and we place the Manifesting AISO on it, so it also would have been a guaranteed crit. Now just imagine her giving Rising Up buffs, an immediate turn, and guaranteeing that a Shot in the Dark was a crit. This team more than any other may have scared the devs. I don't know how much they listen to me, but they do check out the podcast. And honestly, after hearing me talk about this team, they may have just thought, it's time to put Shot in the Dark on a starting cooldown. I don't know for sure, but it's kind of funny to think about it. I'm sure it was this team and Heimdall and maybe the emergence of Blue Marvel, which I was excited about. That was going to be my opening team up. Still though, it's not like these team ups are ruined as you saw at the beginning. You just won't get that opening Shot in the Dark. Pitch Black still does a ton of damage, and if the enemy team survives long enough, they're going to be getting hit with that big attack. Also, with Pitch Black having Desperation Attack, the more damage the enemy does to them before they use it, the worse for them. So for example, if Spitfire or someone does go after them and doesn't manage to kill them, they're going to unleash. So yeah, it's definitely not the end of the world as far as changes. Oh, and one side note that you do have to worry about with Nico and the Lantern of Doom is you have to hold off on using her Blood Sacrifice. That's because she won't apply bleeding to herself. In other words, she wouldn't be able to use Rock and Roll or Kick-Ass. And that's something that I actually forget every once in a while when I'm using her, and preventing debuffs. So just keep that in mind and you can go ahead and use it in the next round. Now unfortunately we were affected by Cower, but Nico's going to be up next. Since Null used World Breaker and we have a ton of Meteor Swarm stacks, we are definitely in trouble. We have to take him down. So we use Blood Sacrifice, then we can use that ability on Cloak and Dagger. They really don't have a ton of options though. They would be able to heal, but Despair ruins that. So we'll just use their level 1 to further soften up Null. He's going to go down to dots, I'm pretty confident, but the longer he's alive, the longer we have Meteor Swarm, and that's a big deal. Then on my agent's turn, we're using one of the remaining decent free actions in the game, and that's a Singularity Matrix. You're going to be seeing more of this, especially in an upcoming video that we have planned. After we use that, we actually notice that we don't have Despair. So that was actually kind of an eye-opening thing. And we'll use Alluring Light because of that. So we gain a heal and a shield, and then we can still use the Relentless Rapier to hopefully take down Null. Instead, we practically kill Nico and stop her from resurrecting because the Rapier has Brutal Strike. So yeah, that was really close. That could have been very bad. And following the enemy agent's Warm Zephyr, which is really annoying, they're going to take some absorb energy damage from my agent. Plus they give him an immediate turn, so he's going to finish off Null this time. As far as Cloak and Dagger being up next, just check out this full team heal that they have. We're finally going to get to see that in action. It's called Child of Light. So we will use that, and then we'll follow it with a Shot in the Dark. It's not a huge finish, but that's certainly a very good attack. And it's another win in the books. So that's going to be it for this episode of All Hail the King, but I do hope you enjoyed it. I want to thank you all for watching, and ask you to please like, comment, and subscribe. Then until next time, good luck, and take care.